Everyone assumes intelligence creates wealth. The smartest person in the room should be the richest, the hardest worker, the most disciplined, the one with the best grades. But look around. The valedictorian from your high school? They work at a consulting firm. Good salary, comfortable, but not rich. The kid who barely graduated? He owns 3 car washes and just bought his second rental property. This isn't an accident. This is a pattern. And the pattern reveals something uncomfortable. Intelligence and wealth are not correlated the way we've been taught. In fact, in many cases, they move in opposite directions. Not because smart people are unlucky, but because smart people play the wrong game. Let me explain. When you're smart, the system rewards you immediately. You get good grades. Teachers praise you. Parents are proud. You get scholarships. You get into good universities. You land respectable jobs. The system gives you positive feedback at every step. And this creates a trap. Because the system is not rewarding you for building wealth. It's rewarding you for following instructions. Think about what smart means in school. It means you can memorize information, regurgitate it on tests, follow the syllabus, meet deadlines, respect authority. These are all skills that make you a good employee. None of them make you an owner. The valedictorian learns to optimize for grades. They study harder. They follow every rule. They do exactly what's asked, and they get rewarded. Acceptance letters, job offers, stability. But here's the problem. Wealth doesn't come from following instructions. Wealth comes from seeing opportunities that don't exist yet, from taking risks that other people won't take, from breaking patterns that everyone else follows. And smart people are trained to do the opposite. They're trained to find the right answer, to avoid mistakes, to respect the established path. Average people don't have this training. They didn't get A's. Teachers didn't validate them. The system didn't tell them they were special. So they stopped looking for the system's approval. And once you stop seeking approval, you start seeing options. There's a psychological effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It explains why the least competent people often have the most confidence. They don't know enough to realize what they don't know, so they act boldly. They take risks. They start businesses they're not qualified to run. And sometimes they succeed, not because they're smart, but because confidence matters more than competence when you're trying to build something new. Smart people suffer from the opposite problem. They know too much. They see all the risks. They understand the failure rates. They calculate the downside. And they talk themselves out of taking action. A smart person reads about startups and sees that 90% fail. They think, I shouldn't risk it. An average person hears that 10% succeed. They think, I just need to be in that 10%. Same information, opposite conclusions. The smart person optimizes to avoid failure. The average person optimizes to capture upside. And in a world where wealth comes from asymmetric bets, where one success can erase 10 failures, the average person wins. Let's talk about what smart people do with their intelligence. They get jobs, good jobs, high-paying jobs. A doctor making $300,000 a year. A lawyer making $250,000. An engineer at a tech company making $200,000. Society calls this success. But let's be clear about what this is. This is high-income labor. It's not wealth. Wealth is when you own something that generates money without your time. A rental property that pays you $3,000 a month. A business that runs without you. Equity in a company that grows in value. The doctor makes more money than the landlord. But the doctor has to work for it every year, every month. The landlord doesn't. And here's the key difference. Smart people are taught to optimize for income. Get a degree, get a job, climb the ladder, increase your salary. Average people stumble into ownership because they didn't have access to the high income path. They couldn't get the degree, they couldn't get the job, so they started something, a small business, a side hustle. And over time, that thing became an asset. The smart person looks at the business owner and thinks, I make more than them. And they do, this year. But the business owner is building equity. In 10 years, the business might be worth $2 million. The business owner can sell it and retire. The doctor can't sell their medical degree. If they stop working, the income stops. This is why intelligence doesn't correlate with wealth. Because intelligence gets you the job, but ownership gets you the wealth. And the system never teaches smart people to think like owners. Let's go deeper. Why do smart people avoid ownership? Why do they stick to jobs? Because smart people are rule followers. They succeeded in school by following the rules. They got into college by following the rules. They got hired by following the rules. Their entire identity is built on being good at following rules. But here's the thing about building wealth. Wealth requires breaking rules. Not laws, but norms, conventions, the safe path. You don't get rich by doing what everyone else does. You get rich by doing what other people are afraid to do. Starting a business when you have no experience. Investing in an asset no one else believes in. Moving to a city where you don't know anyone. These are all risks, and risks feel irresponsible to smart people. Because smart people have been taught that responsibility means stability, a steady paycheck, benefits, a 401k. But average people didn't get stability. They couldn't get the safe job. So they had to take risks just to survive. And in taking those risks, they accidentally positioned themselves for wealth. Not because they're bold, but because they didn't have the option to play it safe. Here's another pattern. Smart people think credentials matter. Degrees, certifications, titles. So they invest in education, they collect qualifications, they build impressive resumes, and these things do matter for getting jobs. But wealth doesn't come from credentials. Wealth comes from access. Access to information, access to capital, access to people who control opportunities. And this access doesn't come from being smart. It comes from being in the right rooms. Average people who get rich stumbled into these rooms. Maybe they started a business and met investors. Maybe they bought real estate and met developers. They built relationships through transactions, not through credentials. Smart people, meanwhile, are stuck in credential-based networks, alumni groups, professional associations. These networks are valuable for career advancement, but they don't create wealth. Because everyone in these networks is playing the same game, competing for promotions, competing for jobs. The wealth-building networks are different. They're private, they're invite-only, and they operate on trust, not credentials. A smart person with a Harvard degree might know 500 people on LinkedIn, but if none of those people have capital or deal flow, that network is worthless for building wealth. Fine, an average person with 50 relationships, but those relationships include investors, business owners, and operators. That's a network that creates opportunities. And this is the cruel irony. Smart people spend years building the wrong kind of network, and by the time they realize it, they're too deep in the career path to switch. Let's talk about time. Smart people think in terms of years. Get a degree, work for 5 years, get promoted, work for 10 more years, retire at 65. This is a linear path, predictable, safe. Average people don't think this way. They think in terms of decades, or they don't think about time at all. They start a business not because they have a 10-year plan, but because they need money next month. And then the business survives and grows. And 10 years later, it's worth something. Smart people delay gratification in the wrong direction. They delay ownership because they're building credentials first. I'll get my MBA first, then I'll start a business. I'll work at this company for a few years, then I'll try something entrepreneurial. But by the time they're ready, they have a mortgage, kids, a lifestyle, and the risk tolerance is gone. Average people start when they have nothing to lose, and that's exactly when you should start. Because starting with nothing means failure doesn't hurt, but success changes everything. Here's the final piece. Smart people get trapped by comfort. They land a good job, $120,000 a year, health insurance, retirement plan, respect. It's not wealth, but it's comfortable. And comfort is the enemy of risk. Why would you start a business when you're making $120,000? Why would you invest in something speculative when you have a stable paycheck? The answer is you wouldn't. It doesn't make sense. But this is exactly why smart people stay in the $100,000, $300,000 income range forever. They're comfortable enough not to take risks, but they're not wealthy enough to stop working. Average people never experience this comfort. They make $40,000 or $60,000, and it's not enough. So they take the risk because staying where they are is unacceptable. And some of them fail, but some of them build something. And the ones who build something eventually surpass the smart person with the stable job. Not because they're better, but because they had no choice but to try. So here's what we're really looking at. The education system rewards intelligence. Society rewards intelligence. Employers reward intelligence. But the market doesn't. The market rewards risk-taking, pattern recognition, ownership, access. And these things are not correlated with IQ. In fact, high intelligence can be a liability because it makes you risk-averse. It makes you overthink. It makes you wait for permission. And no one gets rich waiting for permission. This doesn't mean smart people can't build wealth. They can. But they have to unlearn everything the system taught them. They have to stop optimizing for credentials and start optimizing for equity. They have to stop following rules and start questioning why the rules exist. They have to stop seeking approval and start taking risks. And most smart people never do this because the system gave them just enough success to keep them playing the wrong game. Look around at the wealthiest people you know, not the highest earners, the wealthiest. How many of them were the smartest person in their class? Very few. They weren't dumb, but they weren't exceptional students either. What they had was something else: confidence, risk tolerance, a willingness to try things that didn't make sense on paper. And that's the thing the system never tells you. Intelligence gets you a good job, but it doesn't get you wealth. Wealth requires playing a different game entirely. And most smart people never realize they're playing the wrong game until it's too late.